Here we are on Portobello Road, and we've set up a stall. It's in opposition of this mega housing merger, which is going on between Housing Trust, which used to be called the Notting Hill Housing Trust. We've got a collective group of tenants and residents that don't believe there's any trust in this housing trust anymore. It's become it's merging into a mega conglomerate that's going to be a big housing. There's going to be a big housing regeneration, which we call gentrification, social cleansing, and they're teaming up with property companies, and they're socially cleansing the area. Genesis wants to get hold of the Notting Hill stock, which is a hugely valuable stock of mostly Victorian houses, and they want to asset strip these big properties and build mega developments, and most of those mega developments are going to be for private use, and it's what's called social housing, which is anything up to 80% of the market rents. And most of these regeneration projects, 3/4 of them are going to be for private sale, and there's no such thing as social housing anymore. That's what we're fighting for, the future of our generation, children to come. We're fighting for the future of our area, and we've just got Gemma that's going to share a few of her concerns.
Okay, so we've got currently in Notting Hill Housing Pipeline, I've had a look at the breakdown, and they currently have a plan for only 9.9% social housing, so that's actually at social rent, and 0.5% will be the mayoral what's now being called London rents, which is also a lower rate. But the vast majority, there's over 30% of property development for private sale, and there's also over 30% that's supposed to be shared ownership. Now, Notting Hill hails this as a really good way for people to staircase and buy their properties, but what they don't tell you is how unaffordable these shared ownership schemes actually are. And to give you an example, we have one that's advertised on their site in Kensington and Chelsea, just one shared ownership property. It's on the 3rd floor, it's a 1-bedroom flat, and you're going to be paying close to £2,000 a month to be able to afford that place. Looking at their portfolio of shared ownership options, the kind of closest development we have is Brent. In the development in Brent, I've had a look at the different properties, and for a 2-bedroom property, they recommend that your minimum household income is 63,000. Now that's over the London median wage, so it's not anything that is actually affordable to most people who need social housing, and that's actually the lower end of the scale. Some of their properties are going for shared ownership schemes, some of their properties are going up to nearly £2 million. On their private portfolio, you've got properties up to 3.4 million. So this idea that they're actually there to provide affordable housing is a complete nonsense. So they're trying to show themselves, and they actually have in their financial reports as one of their core principles, they actually have providing homes to those who could otherwise not afford them. But we'd like to challenge them on that, because they're not providing homes for people who could otherwise not afford them. They're providing homes at market rents, the majority market rents, private sales, and rents and staircasing for the vast majority of people cannot afford them. The social rents that we currently have are going to go up massively once the rent caps are lifted. If mine were to go up today, it would go up by 13.5% just for the rent. I spoke to the valuation office. They said by 2020, which is when it's going to be lifted, it's likely to be more along the lines of 20%, because in London we're going to see a massive rise in rents on the whole. In addition to that, service charges separate from rent will also go up, so that doesn't have to be included. So that's another percentage where your rent can be increased. Now, those people who don't have service charges might be thinking, oh, won't affect me, I don't have service charges. Another thing they're doing is introducing service charges where there weren't any before. So I asked the valuation office about that, and they said that they're getting a lot of phone calls from people who have just started to have a service charge who have never had a service charge before. In addition to that, there was an interesting thing. They have an example on the Notting Hill website of a rent, and so they have the rent, and then they have the service charge, and then they have something that's called a personal charge. And I spoke to the valuation office about this, and I asked them what is a personal charge, and and they'd never heard of it. So I spoke to someone at Notting Hill Housing, a senior officer in the involvement team, and I asked him what it was. And it was explained to me that this is for anyone who also has something shared in a communal area, like a boiler. I don't know quite the scope of what this is covering, but I know that it's something that can be introduced that the Valuation Office hasn't even heard of. Now, all this is what could happen in 2020 if they don't manage to push through legislations that they're trying to push through to lift the rent caps even further. So what's happening in Genesis at the moment is people across the board, residents across the board, are seeing rent hikes between 30 and 40%, up to an extreme example of 177%. If people don't pay their rents, they can be evicted. In addition to this, another huge problem is that these housing associations who are supposed to be building housing for people who can't otherwise afford them no longer have secure tenure. So this idea of this, you're in a home to rent for life has completely gone. What they're doing is starter tenancies, which are 6 months. At the end of that 6 months, they can either give you a longer tenancy, they can increase your rent, or they can ask you to leave, or they can increase your rent. They can say you can stay if you can pay the higher rent. In addition to that, they can introduce fixed term tenancies, and they can, if they choose to do so, they can then give you an assured short hold tenancy. But that is all at their whim. So there's nothing guaranteed in that process. Since the deregulation of that was brought in by the Housing Act, they now actually have the ability to do this. They don't have to go through the regulation that they had to go through. So they now got a lot more autonomy in what they choose to do. So that's a little bit about what is currently happening, what's possible. Another thing that they want to do is to introduce a digitalisation of personal services. Now they say that it will only, on their website, what they say is that this will only be for people who want it, and that they'll still provide a personal service for people who don't want it. But that's very dubious. I don't think anyone really has a lot of confidence in that. The big problem that we have with the merger is that people haven't been consulted on the merger, and that is really, we're doing a protest on the 13th of September outside the Notting Hill Housing Office, Bruce Kendrick House in Killick Street in King's Cross. That's going to be 5:30. We're going to prepare ourselves, we're going to protest. They've got a shareholder meeting. It's a really important protest. What we'd like them to do is put on hold their vote on this, because people haven't been consulted, and they're being reassured with these road shows that they've conducted over a period in August, where Notting Hill Housing don't even have meetings because they know so many people are away, and this is the period of time they chose to consult with residents. In addition to that, they had a phone number for people to phone, which was out of order during the consultation period, and I know because I tried to phone it over several days. I made a complaint to Ellie Holt, who said that it would be dealt with immediately. 2 days later, it still was out of order, because I spoke to other people who have been trying to call it in. And everyone that we've spoken to so far, and it's around the 2,000 mark between ourselves and Genesis residents, we've spoken to over 2,000 people. We can't find anybody who is for this merger. Most people are saying we don't know anything about it, we don't know what it means, and that's because Notting Hill Housing and Genesis aren't actually providing any information. People can't make an informed decision about something that they don't have enough information on. So what we're trying to do is actually have proper discourse with people, where people can feedback and find out about what is actually going on, what this merger actually means for people, and whether they want it to go ahead. Because that question, they sent out a questionnaire, and there was no option for people to say they didn't want the merger. There was only an option for saying, what would you like to happen as a result of this? What would you like to see improved? And basically we're seeing it as a PR stunt on a done deal. And people are really not happy about this. And it's really, really apparent in everyone that we speak to. We've been holding meetings, we've been doing stalls, and everyone that we speak to, we haven't had a single person say, oh no, it's a great idea. Not a single person has said that. Every single person has either wanted to know more about it, or has said it's an absolutely terrible idea, and the vast majority have said it's a terrible idea. We've had a couple of public meetings for residents. At one, it was so busy we couldn't even get everyone in, and it was a capacity of 100, so we couldn't even get everyone in. Loads of people had to stay outside, but at that we had a vote on whether people, after a lot of conversation, we had a vote. We didn't do that at the beginning, so we wanted people to talk about things they were concerned about. And we had a vote, and 107 people voted against the merger, and there were 3 abstentions, and not a single person voted in favour of the merger. And this is the residents, and these are the people who actually need to be consulted, and they need more information. We're not being given any information, and that's one of the major problems. Is what we're being paid at the moment is lip service. We're being reassured or assured that there's going to be no changes in the short term, and that's a really important sentence. They've used it on their letter, in the short term, because it also shows that they're going to make some changes in the long term. And I imagine that that's probably somewhere in link to the rent caps and how rents are going to increase. And it's really important for residents to know. And we've also printed our information sheet in Arabic. We don't know that Notting Hill Housing has actually sent these letters out in any other languages. And it's very important because there's a very large Moroccan community around here, and there's a very diverse community, and we have a lot of people speaking a lot of different languages who don't know about what's happening because they haven't been provided that information in their language that they speak at home.